Howdy folks, this is Big Sam. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to understand what an Dragoon is. In the world of mosins, a lot of terms get thrown around all the time, and it can get kind of confusing. So, what I'm going to do today is take you through some quick tips to help you understand A, what an Dragoon is, and B, to help you identify one the next time you're at your local gun store, pawn shop, or gun show. Now, before we get into what a Dragoon is, we got to understand how the Mosin started. On the left here, you will see an M91 rifle. This was the standard issue infantry Mosin during World War I. Now you'll notice to the right of it is a Dragoon, right there in the middle. And then to the right of him is an Dragoon. So going back to the M91 rifle, this was the standard issue rifle during World War I. And pretty much your average infantry soldier would be carrying one of these. Now a Dragoon is a slightly shorter version of an M91 rifle, and it's designed to be used by what are known as Dragoons, which are basically mounted infantry. So these were guys who would go into battle on a horse, but once they got to where their fighting positions would be, they would dismount, and then from then on, they would fight like normal infantry would. So they would still have bayonets affixed to their rifles all the time in combat, but it was just a little bit shorter to make it a little bit easier to manage when transporting on horseback. So we're going to take a little closer look here. First here at the M91 rifle. Now the easiest way to identify these guys in the fields, you're going to be looking at two main things. So the first thing are going to be these springs right here. So if you're looking at a Mosin and it doesn't have these V-springs in the stock, one at the back and one up here at the front, if it doesn't have that, you're almost certainly going to be looking here at an M91 rifle. M91s do not have those springs. In fact, this is the only Russian-produced rifle that would be considered a Mosin that doesn't have these springs right here. So if it doesn't have one of those springs at the back or at the front, you're going to be looking at an M91 rifle like we have here. Get my camera to work here. Sorry guys. There we go. Now, what is a Dragoon? And how do we identify it? Well, remember the first thing is this V-spring here. The second thing we're going to be looking at is the rear sight, okay? Now, this rear sight here is called the Konovalov rear sight. This was used from about 1908, when the Spitzer cartridge first came around, up until around 1930. Both the M91 rifle here and the Dragoon will have a Konovalov rear sight. Okay, so now we know what an M91 rifle is, and we know what a Dragoon is. But we haven't talked about this guy on the right here. What is he? Well, as I already stated at the beginning of the video, we know this is an Dragoon. But what makes an Dragoon an Dragoon? And what distinguishes an Dragoon from your standard 9130? Now this looks actually like your standard 9130, the most commonly encountered Mosin in the wild. If you see a Mosin at a pawn shop or a gun show, chances are it's going to be a 9130 and look just like this guy. So how do we tell the difference between a 9130 and an Dragoon? Well, we're going to be taking a look at the barrel markings here. So you can see this guy was made in 1895, which is quite old, okay? So we know that in 1895, they were only making M91 rifles and Dragoons, not 9130 rifles. So from that we can infer that this is an ex-Dragoon. Because what they did was they would take your standard Dragoon like you see here, they would change out the front sight there, and they would change out the Konovalov sight for a rear tangent sight. Your standard 9130 rear sight. However, they wouldn't really do anything else. The barrel, the receiver are still the same. Now they would change out the ejector to be a two-piece system. And they might change out some of the parts and the bolt. But that's really about it, and you'd also change the stock. This is a post-war stock here. So how do you tell the difference between this guy and a Dragoon? Well, you're going to be looking at this rear sight's the big thing. And I'll give you a little Big Sam tip here. If you're ever looking at a Mosin that has a Konovalov rear sight and it has this V-spring here, you need to buy that Mosin, because that is a pretty rare sight to see. Again, almost all Dragoons were converted into 9130s. So finding a Dragoon that's not converted is very interesting and quite valuable. It's not something you hardly ever see. So again, if you ever see a Mosin with these springs and it has a Konovalov rear sight, not your standard 9130 rear sight, you need to buy that Mosin. Well, the wind's starting to pick up here in Colorado, folks, so I think that's going to be all for today. Hopefully that helped answer some of your questions about what a Dragoon and an ex-Dragoon are. And if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys, and let me know if y'all got any prayer requests. God bless and have a great day. Bye.